We have started to record the most recent session of MM2003, Reporting and Writing for the Mass Media for the Fall Semester. It is Tuesday, October 26th, 2021. We're going to be looking at a number of your projects related to Assignment 12, Numeracy. We're also going to be doing some research about Assignment 13, which is International Hard or Feature News. Before we do that, however, I want to go to Google Drive and remind you about two projects that are going to be due this week. I always go from Google Drive. You can access this obviously from my website. When you click on assignments, let's focus on the rest of the month, because by the time we get into Tuesday of next week, it will be November. So assignment 12, numeracy, is due at class time today. Assignment 13 we'll be doing research on, including looking at previous projects from the fall semesters of 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2017 for international hard or feature news. So today, assignment 12, numeracy, is due. On Thursday the 28th, assignment 13, international hard or feature news, will be due. I want all of you to continue to focus on a compact nature to your stories. They don't have to be fantastically long. As we've seen from previous class sessions, you'll notice that many sentences in student blogs are possibly complete paragraphs in and of themselves, or short paragraph structures. One of the things that we've been doing in recent classes is counting the number of paragraphs on occasion with student blogs past and present. So we're not necessarily into a total word count. As you'll see from a couple of the projects for assignment 13, international hard or feature news, the stories are interesting, they're dynamic, but they're not necessarily in terms of words all that long. It all depends upon what the story is and how creative you can make the lead, making sure that you're following the concept of at least ideally 3 of the 5 W's in the lead sentence to your piece: who, what, where, why, or when, and trying to write in third person as much as possible, because as you well know, we have, as you can see on the screen, assignment 16 and 17, which will be due during the month of November before Thanksgiving. You'll have the opportunity to write opinion pieces both with assignment 16 for a local issue and assignment 17 for a state, national, or international issue. But before we get to the month of November, I want to be through at minimum 13 projects of the 20. And then we can get into trending on social media, assignment 14, entertainment or popular culture, assignment 15, opinion piece, both local and state, national, or international. So by the time we get to Thanksgiving break, we should be right around assignment 18 or 19. When we return, we've got 1 full week of classes before finals. Ideally, all we'll have to do is the wild card, assignment 20, making sure that everything is caught up as much as possible, and start thinking about ideas for the final project on visual journalism. And even though I don't talk about it all that much, you might want to consider looking at what I call an informal SAU blog rubrics form. This is available on the website, and I do it for all classes involving blogs. But just think about the quality of your work in this course as the semester goes on. From the concept of content, is your structure seamless? Are your headlines clickable? Is your reporting extensive? Your writing descriptive? Is your language concise? Particularly important for a course like this. Is your copy editing accurate? Is your fairness inclusive? Your media research thorough? And your analytical perspective thoughtful? That comes really more into play for the opinion pieces than anything else. And of course, we can't forget that with billions of blogs online around the world, when it comes to the visuals related to your blog and your overall creativity, is your design consistency uniform? Your font size, color, and shading readable? Your text image balance comparable? Your interactivity recurrent? Is there a link to the story in which you have edited, for instance? Is your navigation optimized both on your phone and on your computer? Is your social engagement shareable? Because we're doing this on Google Blogger and you've seen me go to the bottom of many of the works that you've done, click on share. So that pretty much is a given in this course. Is your mobile compatibility friendly? And I think most importantly, from the standpoint of visuals, is your aesthetic appeal creative? If I click on your name, is that representative of your personality? And then once we have entered that doorway, is the interest in your news blog something that is well researched, well written, and of course, well edited? The SAU blog rubrics form is something that is unofficial, but I think it's helpful to have when you are late at night, honestly looking at the quality of your work for this class. You click on anyone from fall of 2021. Then you can go on the website and click from students in years gone by, realizing that sometimes from previous years, the images might not necessarily still be there, but for the most part, they're intact. Does your blog measure up? Does it look, feel, and read like a professional news blog? If it doesn't, you need to go back in and edit. Part of that element is the concept of timeliness. So before we get to any of your works this week, a friendly peek at the syllabus and point allocation. When you continue to scroll through with 200 points for the blog, 50 for the final project, and 50 to log in regularly on Blackboard and watch these videos via Ultra, proper time management is essential to success in researching and writing course assignments. If anyone is always falling behind, is that going to have a bearing on your grade? Absolutely. It's really important that you stay up to date as much as possible. There will always be, depending upon the quality of the Blackboard app or your interactivity, situations where for one reason or another you fall behind. But if we get to the end of the semester and you're still catching up, that's not going to be appropriate, nor is it going to be something that professionals would want you to be like and the outside world. So here we had, as I mentioned a moment ago, for the 300 points in the course, and I think this is helpful because now we are officially past the halfway point of the fall 2021 semester. Reporting and writing assignments for the blog, 200 points. The final project for visual journalism, 50 points. And don't be afraid to experiment. If you wanted to do something that is a visual journalism that may be a data visualization or infographics or innovative visual method, video clips, photographs, possibly something even on TikTok, don't be afraid to ask me those questions, because we're always going to be expanding the boundaries of how individuals are going to access news and information. Submit it at any time during final exam week, and that will be right at the top of your blog. And then class participation, 20 points. Are you going into Blackboard on a regular basis? And I can check this in the grade center as I do for the tweets. And let me show you, before we go any further, I'll leave it there for the time being and find the most recent tweet that I sent out for this course and then make it available for all of you to see. And I will put this up on the screen so you can see it. The most recent tweet that I sent out for this class was at the end of last week. And here it is. October 21 screenshot, 14 downloadable course videos on Blackboard for viewing and research purposes. And if I want to click on that visual, you can see everything that is available on the website. from video A all the way to video N. Video A, second from the left on the top row. Video N, second from the left on the bottom row. Actually, third from the left on the bottom row. So you've got a ton of different material that you can access for research information, starting here and then going all the way down here. Just in case anyone has an issue, that's always the way to go to find whatever you think is appropriate for the course. And let me take that graphic on the screen off so you can see what the tweet looks like. And from this point, I can click on the course hashtag with latest, and you can see that I've been sending out assignments, not as much as in other courses, but as we move on toward the rest of the semester, don't be surprised if I start sending out projects from students who are currently enrolled in this course. In this particular case, for assignment 10 listing posts, I sent out a tweet a couple of weeks ago highlighting the work of Gwen, but it's very possible I could be doing it for all of you as well. Now let's take a look at some of your blogs. And as of course time today, I'm going to be looking first of all at assignment 12, numeracy from Singletary, Roland, Rich, Hines, Harrell, and Gunnels. And then the rest of you, Whaley, Smith, Robertson, Rinke, Miner, McDaniel, Hunt, and Briggs, we'll see how all of you are catching up with particular projects. But I want to show your particular blogs first for this week. Then we'll do some research on assignment 13, International Horror Feature News, due at this time on Thursday. So we will have a baker's dozen of assignments completed by the time we get to the month of November. And as I indicated at the outset, we'll probably be close to assignment 18 or even 19 by Thanksgiving break. The first website I am going to show you today is Lauren. I have already clicked to the assignment itself, and this is Lauren's project on numeracy. Those are the graphics that are associated with it. I would say, depending upon what style you use in uploading data to the blog, sometimes the visuals work when I click on them and sometimes they don't. It really doesn't matter as long as they're easily readable. So let's examine what Lauren is doing for numeracy. Quote, one very prominent thing I've learned as I have gotten older is that I do use math every day. Now that's a nice, compact lead sentence. Notice for her paragraphs, she is flush left, and they're not really long, but in each of the paragraphs, she's got a link to numeracy, a link to NCES. In each paragraph, there is a link. It doesn't matter in the stories that all of you produce, but it's nice to have your sources cited early on. When presented with the word numeracy, most people would automatically assume it isn't something you need in everyday life. This isn't necessarily true. Numeracy is the ability to understand, with a link, the ability to understand and work with numbers. If you've ever had to figure out what time you had to leave to be somewhere, you understand numbers. When cooking, if you've ever had to double a recipe, you are being numerate. When it comes down to numeracy, it is the ability to understand math in everyday life, such as home, work, or school. She could have very easily, look at this sentence. If you have ever had to figure out what time you had to leave somewhere, you understand numbers. When cooking, if you've ever had to double a recipe, you understand numbers. She could have very easily used the phrase, you understand numbers, as a device of repetition for this story. It's okay the way that she has it here too, but don't ever be afraid to experiment with word play in your copy. And think about the power of words, and always try to edit to make sure that you have the essence of the story. Her link to numeracy is opening in a separate window, and I'm not going to put it up on the screen, but what I am looking at right now is actually it is opening on the same screen. This is the definition of numeracy, and we're getting a lot on the screen here, a lot of advertisements. The definition of numeracy from Merriam-Webster: the ability to understand and work with numbers, the quality or state of being numerate. Notice that when you read the sentence in her copy, right here, she says you are numerate. For many individuals, that may not necessarily feel like it is a correct usage of the term in a sentence, but as we saw from the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition that Lauren provided, that is accurate. Continuing, when it comes down to it, numeracy is the ability to understand math in everyday life, such as home, work, or school. Next lead sentence, quote, according to NCES, the average numeracy score among U.S. adults was 257 on a scale of 0 to 500. And then we click on NCES, and data point from the United States Department of Education, August 2018, comes up in the window. And there are different graphics on the literacy and numeracy skills of U.S. men and women. Now, do these look familiar? Absolutely. There's another one. Does it look familiar? So if you want to use these screen grabs, it's certainly acceptable. National Center for Education Statistics. And notice in this website, which was provided by the federal government, it's got a number of interactive links within it as well. So the ability, as you know at the top of my website, when I say think critically, research globally, write interactively, this is what I mean, writing interactively, when you've got some type of links for your projects. That is my definition of the term. And then she is rewriting a lot of the data that was just provided in the link that I showed you. Next lead sentence paragraph, quote, according to another study by the Institute of Education Sciences, over 70% of U.S. adults have sufficient numeracy skills to calculate whole numbers and percentages, estimate numbers or quantity, and interpret simple statistics in text or tables. Final lead sentence, quote, the Institute of Education Sciences also found that 85% of the total studied adults that had low numeracy skills were born in the United States. The other 15% were born outside of the United States. Now that brings us back to her lead paragraph. Quote, when cooking, if you've ever had to double a recipe, you are numerate. When it comes down to it, numeracy is the ability, as I indicated previously, you're understanding math in everyday life, home, work, or school. Now let's go back down here and click on her final bit of interactivity. And this is a PDF document from the Institute of Education Sciences of Adult Numeracy in the United States. Again, from data point, but from September 2020. And it has different statistics. For instance, figure 1, adults 16 to 65 at each level of proficiency. And you'll notice that the plurality of individuals, 32.3%, are at level 2. And that is page 2 of the PDF document. So citing your sources is really important for media professionals. So I will know the places where you got your data. And of course, data and numeracy go together. What was I showing you a few minutes ago in the syllabus for the final project on visual journalism? If you wanted to do something related to what Lauren does here, it would be called data journalism. And something like that would be appropriate for the final visual journalism project due during final exam week. A reminder, when you click on Lauren's website, she's already ahead of the game to international harder feature news, but we will save that until Thursday of this week. A teaser, it is Australia pledging net zero emissions by 2050. This is what her website looks like, more than halfway through. the fall semester, you want it to look as consistent as possible from 1 through 20. It's very important. Click on her name again, and that's what we see. So a nice job from Lauren to start out. The next person we're going to look at who has, at minimum, completed assignment 12 is Alexis. As was the case with Lauren, I have already gone to the assignment itself within the website. And here's what she's doing on numeracy with a link to Business of Apps. TikTok has grown a lot since its creation days, and ironically, there are individuals representing TikTok who are testifying on Capitol Hill today. This app is a short video sharing act that at first just contained dancing, lip-syncing videos. Now this app has blossomed into a platform that encompasses all topics, and there are derivations, aka rip-offs, of TikTok that are sprouting all over the world. ByteDance, and we talked about this in one of my international classes a few years ago, the parent company has launched a version of this app internationally. Musical LY is what we talked about a few years ago. Musical.ly and ByteDance. Very aggressive in this category. There is a tight shot of the graphic, and here is a link to the article opening in the same window, which is discussing TikTok, its revenue and usage statistics from the Business of Apps website. And here you can see the entire TikTok report for a fee, but this is her original source. And it's really important to understand the relevance of having all of this data for your story, and to make certain that whenever you are rewriting the story, you're not taking anything out of context. Now look at how TikTok has changed. As I indicated a moment ago, we talked about variations of this years ago in some of my international courses. How TikTok, as we know it, has grown from 65 million users 4 years ago to 1 billion today. And in the same way, many people here and around the world are making money or making a living from their YouTube channels. You're seeing more and more individuals here and around the world make a living from TikTok. Now back to the story. Next paragraph, lead sentence quote, TikTok has generated 1.9 billion in revenue in 2020 and a 457% increase year on year. Now notice when we were looking at that story, the number 457% did come up. TikTok had 837 million monthly active users in 2020. It's been downloaded 3 billion times. The revenue has gone up because remember, it has just been exponential in terms of growth. So 1.9 billion in 2020 for the app with 700 million users. And right now we're still waiting for the 2021 number, which will probably be way in excess of that number. And then by region, Southeast Asia, North America, I should say, Southeast Asia, North America. We have other areas of the world. All of them have increased over the past 3 years in terms of that study and the downloads. Now keep in mind for numeracy, something like this is important. Like what we looked at last week from MagnoliaReporter.com. For some of these statistics, all you're doing is basically dropping and dragging the numbers into your story. So there's not necessarily a way that you could rewrite this. You probably could, but I think the way that she has it is certainly appropriate. The demographics, not unusual that those who would be in college right out of high school comprise 28, 35%. 63% of the 100% of the TikTok age demographics would be from under 18 to 29. TikTok is used by 18% of global internet users aged 16 to 64. And isn't this interesting? The breakdown of TikTok users by gender: 59% female, 39% male. If you're looking at a social media platform such as Pinterest, the numbers are also heavily skewed toward female, probably much more so than on TikTok. And the engagement by country, I'm guessing this is probably a little bit higher number if you're college age. 68 minutes a day in the United States feels a little low. Norway, according to this list, is highest on the engagement list. 88% positive views on TikTok, reviews, and valued at 50 billion by investors. And the more people use it, the more that number is going to rise. So a nice job by Alexis in taking a story that can be rather difficult, heavily numerically based, as you saw from her source, and putting it into a context that a readership can understand. And we will do the same thing for her that we did a few minutes ago with Lauren. This is what the website for Alexis looks like from top to bottom in her stylistic format, all the way down to what is news. If you look at Lauren's or this from Alexis on your phones or on your computers, do they look professional? And I would say absolutely. The answer is yes. But we have many miles to cross for all of you. That's why it's so helpful to have your classmates' websites to examine at the link that's available for this course, or from classes gone by, and we'll be looking at those a few minutes from now. Let's go to Taylor. As you know, I keep many windows open during this class. I will refresh this to see whether she got ahead of the game with 13. She is, like the other two ladies, at numeracy, and this is what she has. Notice the graphic that she used is large enough so it's not going to pixelate whenever it becomes larger. And then we go to read more. We've got 1 and 2 graphics. The first one looks like a generic number image that she downloaded, and this is an edited screenshot. COVID-19 reported cases per 100,000 outside metropolitan areas as of December of last year. Now, keep in mind, December of 2020 was right around the time when some of the mRNA vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna, were going through some final testing before the preliminary authorization by federal agencies. If you're anything like me, the idea of math or numbers makes your mind instantly shut down. As we've seen earlier with Lauren and with Alexis, Taylor is primarily using shorter paragraphs, and most of the time it is left flush. Next, lead sentence. Even though numbers and statistics are not my favorite topic of discussion, growing up is understanding that you cannot necessarily escape it. Keep in mind, her first paragraph was 2 short sentences, with the second one being, quote, math has never been my best subject, which is why I chose the major furthest from it. Here's the irony, Taylor. Math is something that you're going to be using every day in media, as many other professions. Her paragraphs are relatively short. First paragraph, 2 sentences. Second paragraph, a sentence unto itself, and that's fine. Numbers have power. Very nice, strong, short lead sentence to a paragraph. Numbers have power. Leading into this, they can be described as persuasive pieces important to confirm your sources and their reliability. Persuasive pieces of evidence. But even though these facts look good to verify a paper, it's important as I said, to confirm your sources and their reliability. Persuasive pieces of evidence, opening in the same window, from the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill Writing Center, statistics. The purpose of this handout is to help you use statistics to make your argument as effective as possible. Now, I could also use anything similar to this for my basic or advanced public speaking course, how you can use statistics to make your argument as effective as possible. So it discusses, does your evidence come from reliable sources? What is the data's background? Are all data reported? Because you don't, as a media professional, ever want to take anything out of context. Have the data been interpreted correctly? Writing statistics, and it goes on and on and on. So those are tips and tools on statistics from the University of North Carolina. Now let's move back to her blog. As much as I do not want to admit it, numeracy is an essential part of news delivery. Again, a strong, powerful, relatively short, compact lead sentence to a paragraph. Numeracy is described as the ability to understand and work with numbers. Does that look familiar? That was what we were looking at the beginning of class with Lauren's blog post. For the past year and a half, we as a population have depended on the newest updates of statistics concerning COVID-19 cases with a link. Now she's going to Worldometer in the United States, 46.4 million coronavirus cases, more than 750,000 deaths, and 36.29 million have recovered. Keep in mind, those numbers are probably conservative. As I've indicated in at least one of my classes this week, the number of deaths that are confirmed in the United States from COVID-19 is equivalent to roughly the size of Denver, Colorado. It's nothing to sneeze at. I think with all of the vaccines, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, it would be interesting to see whether or not there is any type of statistic from the federal government that might postulate how many deaths since the vaccines have been available at the beginning of 2021, and now with boosters available as well. How many projected deaths have been avoided? How many potential coronavirus cases have been avoided? Keeping in mind that if you are immunocompromised, you can have 2 shots and possibly still get sick or die. That's why this virus is so deadly. Now let's go back to her story. So far, 1, 2, 3 different links related to numeracy. These numbers mean something to a worldwide audience because they update us with the most recent numbers of cases around us. Next lead sentence, quote, numeracy is used to legitimate the information that a source is producing. Writing or speaking about a topic without backing it up with statistics can make your information look illegitimate. That's true. You have to make certain that you let the audience decide from the numbers. It's not your responsibility unless you're writing an opinion piece, and we talked about those 2 that you'll be doing in early November. It's your responsibility as a media professional to put all of the data out there in a proper context that your audience ideally can digest and understand. Even as a mass communication major, I understand the importance of including numeracy within a paper or report. Again, very strong lead sentence. The dependability of including a quote or statistic brings a safety net, confirming the information from the source. And it is. It really is a force field, so to speak. It's not your responsibility to tell people what to think or even tell people what to think about. It's your responsibility as a gatekeeper, even though in a social media era, really the idea of a gatekeeper has gone by the wayside. But it's your responsibility to make certain that you don't lead anyone down the primrose path. Let the statistics speak for themselves and put them in the proper context without going out of your way to skew the data. In conclusion, no matter what I choose to do with my life, math will always find a way to bother me. And that is okay. That is a nice, humorous way to wrap up the piece, because whether it's paying your mortgage, whether it is trying to figure out a recipe, anything that involves math. It's always something that's going to come out. And that's why I think for many students, having a mathematical literacy-based course is a nice option for college algebra, whether it be here or somewhere else. So that is what Taylor's numeracy story looks like. It's nice, it's concise, it's well written, it's well researched, and also the aesthetics, including the graphic and the screenshot, are very helpful. Now, again, let's take a look at this from top to bottom. Does this look like something that you might see in a professional blog? And I would argue from each of our three contestants so far today, that would be the case. As we saw with Lauren and with Alexis, this is what Taylor's website looks like. The design consistency, what I was talking about at the outset from the unofficial SAU blog rubrics form, down to number 1. Click on her name. That's what you see. So the next blog we are going to examine that is at assignment 12 numeracy is Haley. This is what hers looks like before we click on read more. In Haley's case, she's got 1 and 2 different stories, graphics related to her story. Lead sentence, quote of paragraph 1. As of 2019, there are about 3.018 million people in the state of Arkansas, according to the United States Census Bureau. Ironically, earlier today, before I came online, I was watching on Arkansas Educational Television Network, one of its digital channels. Governor Hutchinson came in at 1:30 for some of the latest COVID updates, and he got, along with one of the head doctors of the state of Arkansas, a flu shot on live streaming television. Arkansas, not a COVID shot, but a flu shot, because now it's the flu season. Arkansas has been tagged as one of the hotspot states for coronavirus cases since nearly the beginning of the pandemic, and Governor Hutchinson was on national television over the weekend indicating that many of the numbers in the state regarding COVID-19 vaccinations are beginning to rise. And he is very optimistic that when 5 to 11-year-old children have opportunities to get a coronavirus shot, which should be sometime in early November, that those numbers hopefully are going to be in a positive direction. The state has suffered from several spikes in cases and many large outbreaks due to high transmission rates. From the start of the pandemic until current days, the Arkansas Department of Health has kept numerical records of the rises and drops in cases due to COVID-19. Now, that is the graphic that I was showing you before. That is her screenshot. As of yesterday, it includes total cases, total active cases, total deaths in terms of vaccinations, doses received, given, percent of dosages received, individuals partially or fully immunized. Hospital data, testing, new cases continue to trend in a positive direction. Lead sentence, quote, the update from the Arkansas Department of Health gave insight on the current standings of many aspects of the pandemic. And then we see some more numbers that she has taken from the graph and placed it into a paragraph context. As of yesterday, the state had lost 11 more Arkansans due to the coronavirus. That, of course, is from the Arkansas Department of Health. Next lead paragraph, sentence, quote, another section went into detail about the current state of vaccinations. At the end of 2020, a vaccine was released to the public, but would be considered limited until around March of 2021. And that's true. The statistics for the state of Arkansas still lag in comparison to the national numbers. But as more and more people get vaccinated, that is going to be very positive as we get into the spring of 2022. More and more people get vaccinated. Eventually, there will be that state where you get to the immunity stage, and hopefully we won't have to wear masks in public for much longer. Another section went into detail about the current state of vaccinations. And of course, when I'm talking about masks, I'm talking about mandates in some school districts, some universities at SAU. The numbers at SAU have been trending in such a positive direction that classes are still required inside a classroom itself for students and faculty to wear masks and physically distance. But around campus, you don't necessarily have to wear masks, even though ironically, you still see a lot of people inside buildings wear masks, but once they walk outside, you'll see many people taking a mask off. The overall takeaway from the Arkansas Department of Health's coronavirus update is that the state has drastically slowed. The transmission rate is continuing to heal from the rough 3 years. And there is a link to the Arkansas Department of Health website. This one is opening in a different window. I can tell you, it is the Arkansas Department of Health website. It's got news and publications, all different kinds of data, but you can go to that link at your leisure if you want to later on. So that is her story. And it is commendable how she took all of these numbers, as I showed you before, and put it into a digestible context that is readily easy to understand in this particular paragraph, starting with the update from the Arkansas Department of Health. And then she's got, for a live interactive experience, click here, and that is opening in a different window. This is Haley's website from top to bottom. Most of you will continue between now and mid-December through final exam week, putting together a blog that is really representative of your personality, and then the meat and potatoes, the nuts and bolts, the guts of it being the writing and the editing. The reporting, the sourcing is just crucial for your overall credibility as a media professional. The next website we're going to be looking at is Kaylee, and I already have her numeracy project put up on the screen. We've seen her work. She's out of state taking this course online. This is what Kaylee is looking at with gun violence. And she quotes the Second Amendment right at the top of her piece. She's got photos, vintage of women with apparently rifles. The Second Amendment states, as a citizen of America, we have the right to keep and bear arms, while the government may not interfere with that right. And she continues with the quote, many think during the revolutionary times, people utilized firearms for hunting and other remedies. However, that is true, but not the exact reasoning behind the Second Amendment. And she goes on to quote it. And then she's got a subheading for gun laws, quote, many people are questioning whether our amendments are protecting the rights of individuals to own a gun or if it is doing the nation harm. Then she talks about at the bottom of the paragraph, however, quote, in recent years, guns have been needed for self-defense, as well as foreign hazards that have been occurring in communities all around the world. Because of the number of mass media shootings or mass shootings occurring around the world, gun violence is at an extreme. And she lists a video from ABC News about that fact.
Armed and dangerous.
There are now some 40 million handguns.
Firearms injuries represent an epidemic
of gun violence. Join us in this campaign to reduce gun violence.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a
Another
gun
mass shooting
is
in
a
America.
good guy with a
Shooting
gun.
around 316 people are shot every single day.
Gun violence, a topic that's deeply divisive in America, a country where guns are embedded in everyday life. As of 2018, it was estimated that there are approximately 400 million civilian-owned guns in America. That means there are more guns than there are people or cars in the US. By comparison, Americans own more guns per capita than any other country, accounting for about 40% of the world's total gun ownership. And that number is likely to increase. Since 2008, the US firearm industry's worth grew 232%, making it a $63.5 billion industry in 2020. But the reason for division over gun ownership isn't just because the US owns the most guns. It's because it also has the highest rate of mass shootings, gun-related homicides, and firearm suicides among similarly developed nations.
Our politics is just not being incentivized to pay attention to the things that would actually reduce gun violence.
Now that's roughly the first 90 seconds of the in-depth ABC piece on gun violence. Now remember how she set this up. Quote, because of the number of mass shootings occurring around the world, gun violence is at an extreme. This would be a perfect feature story to examine the concept of numeracy with gun laws or gun violence around the world. So while I have muted the audio, notice that in the video, it is laden with a number of statistics. And then she's got the Bill of Rights and a number of individuals quoted within the story itself. Now, I'll just go ahead and let that stay at the top. She has a gun violence tracker. Quote, more than 97,000 deaths and more than 193,000 injuries over the past 5 years. And all you need to do is to think about what happened over the weekend on the Rust movie set in Arizona, where there was a tragic incident where a film director was killed and also someone else was injured from live ammunition being on the set. Now let's move down to a second graphic with the gun violence tracker. That was from 2016 to 2021, and that would open up in a separate area. Same here. In the last week, 374 deaths and 726 injuries over the past week. Now we can see that in the past year, more than 20,000 deaths and 39,000 injuries, close to 40,000. Now remember, those are the reported statistics. They very easily could be higher. All of these numbers reinforce the topic. I don't feel safe in school, March for Our Lives. Those are from individuals who feel strongly about some type of enhanced gun regulation in the United States. And depending upon where you are in the world, sometimes certain types of weapons are illegal, certain types of armor-piercing bullets might be illegal, but in the United States, it is a lot different. And there you have more data on gun laws, and that is what Kaylee decided to do for numeracy. This is what Kaylee's website looks like as of today. It looks like she has skipped over a couple of projects and went ahead and did numeracy, and she is filling in some of the gaps. Kaylee, I know that you've got a different format for this, but I would say for your blog, the way that you've got all of these set up, I would use the snapshot style right here. I think that is probably the way that you've got your blog set up. I think this would be the best representation of your creativity. Occasionally, you're using some of the others. So for instance, even though this is not what you're doing, a couple of years ago, this is what Christy Glass did for the sidebar. And that's what it looks like on the sidebar when you do it that way. And there's assignment 12. But for all of your projects, I think Snapshot works really, really well. I just really like that. For your particular types of assignments. Now let's examine the final project for today that is at assignment 12, numeracy. This is Gwen. Like the others, I already have it on the assignment itself. Numeracy and COVID-19 vaccines. And that is what she used as a generic graphic, which certainly is acceptable and colorful. Quote, I have always been one to struggle when it comes to numbers. I am what others would consider right-brained, meaning I am more creative and artistic rather than analytical. We need more right-brained people in media writing classes like this, Gwen, so you can use your right-brained expertise for something that in many cases, at least in this class, would be a left-brained activity. Although it would be nice to escape the world of numbers for people like me, they will always be a part of life, no matter your field of study or choice of employment. Numeracy, with a link, is defined as the ability to understand and work with numbers. Although we may not realize it, we work with numbers every day, even in non-traditional settings. And some people will use numeracy as a pronunciation, even though most of us would say numeracy with a link. So let's go ahead and click on this. And this is a popular place to go for the definition of numeracy. That's now the third one that we've seen and certainly acceptable. Remember when we were looking at Lauren's, she used the term numerate, M-U-M-E-R-A-T-E in a sentence. Not numeracy, but numerate. In media, numbers are used quite often. Again, I like the way that she has concise lead sentences. Continuing, media analysts are looking for statistics always to educate others and back up their claims and evidence. Using statistics will help boost a story's credibility in the same way that her links in brown give her credibility. Many of you are using organizational websites as links. In this case, Gwen goes to CML, Center for Media Literacy, quote, the power of numbers, making sense of media statistics. And here we have all different kinds of data that are provided in the website. From your standpoint, you would not want to have anything in that small a font style for your news blogs because that can be really, really hard to read by the time that you actually watch the video. You'd probably want to bump it up a couple of font styles. But it does say those sensational statistics about kids in media may only be half of the story. Think about brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews growing up in a social media era. How are they going to perceive the world? Much differently than probably you, who also grew up in a social media world. But you didn't grow up with TikTok. You didn't grow up with Instagram. You didn't grow up with WhatsApp, which is particularly used by people around the world, much more so than in the United States. Next lead sentence, quote, for the past year and a half, we have constantly been looking for numbers regarding the COVID-19 virus. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were given statistics of those with the illness. Currently, we are looking for the number of people getting vaccinated, or as we saw in one of our class periods last week, what are the statistics from the Washington Post? And that's something that I look at every day. Guide to the pandemic. There's usually a rolling number of above the age of 12, roughly 700 to 8,000 Americans getting vaccinated every day. If we're going to reach for a phrase that I was searching for a few minutes ago with our previous website on herd immunity, more and more people have to get vaccinated. Once we reach herd immunity, more than likely COVID would still be around, but it would be more along the lines of a chronic illness because we had built up an immunity to it, as well as, let's say, the traditional flu or other types of illnesses that might be yearly. So again, in media, numbers are used quite often. Numeracy is defined as the ability to understand and work with numbers. I have always been one to struggle when it comes to numbers Think about how she and everyone so far have been creative with a relatively compact paragraph structure and relatively compact, well-written, error-free lead sentences. For the past year and a half, we have constantly been looking for numbers regarding the COVID-19 virus. And then we had talked about some of the numbers down below. Final paragraph in totality, quote, numbers will always be a part of a person's life. From collecting statistics to counting dollars, we will always depend on numbers to give us specific facts. There will always be a need for numbers, especially in the media. That is what Gwen's website looks like as we go now from assignment 12 all the way down to number 1. And I do this intentionally every class period for a reason. Does it smell professional? So far, I think the answer is yes. But there's always going to be work that needs to be done for everybody's blog. I don't have everyone's blog up today, but I have most of them available. So let's go in reverse alphabetical order and examine where everyone else is for blogs that I have online. Let's go to Carlin first. And she is at assignment 11, which is civics. Let's go to read more. She's got a civic duty graphic, which is certainly acceptable. Saying that it is your civic duty to do something means that it's your duty as a citizen to do what you can to help improve your community and country. Civics is something that is taught daily, and the goal is to inform people about the importance of your civic duty. I'm not going to focus on grammar, spelling, or punctuation right now. I'm going to focus on how she views civics through lead sentences to paragraphs. Next, in this case, Tony Blair is trying to encourage people to get their COVID vaccine by saying it is their civic duty to do so. And then it goes on. Booster shots, the government. For those of you who don't know Tony Blair, starting in the 1990s, he was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Blair believes that you shouldn't have to be invited to come get your booster shot, but instead, if it has been 6 months since you've had your second shot, then you should be able to receive your booster. In the United States, that's what's going on. I can tell you that I had both of my Moderna shots on the SAU campus early this year. I want to say February and March, and I'm eligible to get a booster shot next week, which I will receive. Next lead sentence to a paragraph, quote, Blair realizes, I should say, that people depend on data and the science behind what they are about to put in their body. And it looks like you got a little bit of a spelling error there, or a little bit of a typo. So even though I wasn't going to focus on grammar, spelling, or syntax, that's obviously something you have to go in and tweak. He is trying to convince people saying to get the vaccine is actually your civic duty. And of course, if you're going to be home for the holidays, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, more than likely you're going to be around individuals, possibly young or older, that are immunocompromised. And oftentimes, when individuals get a vaccine, it is as much for themselves as for their loved ones who are immunocompromised. And even though those individuals may have 2 shots or even a booster, that still leaves their susceptibility to COVID not in the same way that someone who is healthier would have. In the UK, they are making a big attempt to try and get kids 12 to 17 to get their vaccine. Currently 50-50 from the paragraph. Final lead sentence paragraph, quote, a paragraph unto itself. It is your choice whether you think getting the vaccine is your civic duty or not. keeping in mind that hers or any other project could be sent out by a variety of social media links, as we indicated early on from the SAU blog format. Is it something that is user-friendly or shareable? And this is Carlin's website from 11 to 1. In many cases, as you know, we have to do an extra click to get through all of your posts back to Carlin's website, and that's where she is right now. For many of you, I am going to show everyone where you are at and not go into detail on current projects, even though we probably will be doing it during a future class session. The next website I'm going to show you is Joanna. And she is still in the same place where she was last week with assignment 10 on listing posts. We will continue to move in roughly reverse alphabetical order, and we will move now to, I believe this is Courtney. And she is at Local and Public Records. We talked about this last week. Courtney, you might want to experiment getting out of this format and using a different style. As you noticed that I was experimenting a few minutes ago with Kaylee's. So you might want to experiment getting into a different format, and hopefully at some point we can get rid of the paper shredder style of data. Hopefully that's something that we can eliminate relatively soon. And then once that's done and everyone gets caught up, we can examine all of your materials in depth as we do with others. The next website that I am going to show you is from Seth. Let me check his, and let me check another one to see. Go to Seth next. Especially at the end of class, I have many windows open, so I have to be doubly careful. And that is the website from Seth. He is still on assignment 9, public records. And once we've gotten into roughly about 12, we will scroll, as we do for many of these, from top to bottom, check out the progress. Next website I want to show you is Trey. And I believe he was one of the individuals earlier this semester who was having some off-campus connectivity issues, so he is still catching up. And that's not unusual in a class like this, but you don't want to fall too far behind. Timeliness, as I showed you from the syllabus, is going to be a part of your grade. So he has hometown hard news for his blog, and that is a popular format. People have used that before. Next website from among your classmates is Morgan. And this is what hers looks like at this point. Much of this we have seen before. So she, like Trey, is catching up. She has a different style, so I'll show you hers from bottom to top. That is somewhat different than what anyone else has used, but that's the nice part about experimenting in this class. And the next website is from Chris. Let me check his to see where we're at with his website. And he is at Campus Hard, or Feature News Assignment 7. You recall we talked about this during a previous class session with the SAU Foundation allowing grants for the nursing program, for some different types of equipment that is more realistic for nursing courses and for students to use before they get to possibly any type of internship opportunity. And that brings us to our final website of the day for your classmates. And the website we are going to look at is Jonathan, who is up to assignment 8. And this is what he has for public records. Jonathan, I will want you to get rid of the award-winning mountain landscape in the back. Let me show you what his website looks like, including all of the work. You recall in a previous class, we did examine the community college professor in Alabama who had been taken into custody for sex crimes. And then we get to project 1, clicking on his name one more time. And let's take a quick dive into what he has for public records. Of course, New Boston, Texas, just on the other side of Texarkana. Something like this comes in handy because we tend to forget that just within an hour or so, we've got a metropolitan area with Texarkana and New Boston's on the other side going towards Dallas. This is the Bowie County Courthouse. And as I recall, you can see that on the interstate as you drive past. So he's talking about Bowie County records and the Bowie County Courthouse. And those are virtually all of the websites that we have looked at so far involving whether it be assignment 12. You'll notice that Lauren got ahead. I'm looking at my notes over here. Lauren's already ahead for assignment 13, but for all of you, it is important to, as we go through the end of October and early November, I don't want anybody to be too far behind. That's why we take time to examine the paragraph structure. We take time to examine the interactivity. We take time to feel whether or not with the aesthetics of the website, it is capturing your voice from a creative standpoint. And then the nuts and the bolts, as we've talked about ad nauseum, for making sure that you're not taking anything out of context, particularly with anything related to data journalism, or in this case for assignment 12, anything related to numeracy. But that brings us to upcoming research. And before we go any further, let me go back to Google Drive and remind you of our next project due at class time on Thursday of this week, which is international hard or feature news. It really does not matter to me the source that you get it from. But before we conclude the proceedings today, I want to quickly show you 4 recent versions of assignment 13, an international hard or feature story from previous courses. That's where we're going to be at the end of the month. There isn't going to be a project due on Tuesday of next week. We'll be doing some research related to trending on social media. Once we get into the month of November, we have roughly 8 or 9 class sessions. So that should get us well on our way to the wild card at the bottom of the screen. The first website that I want to show you that involves an example of an international hard or feature news story is going to be from Sydney Waiter. This is fall 2020. As we had with the numeracy assignments, I already have the story ready. International hard or feature news. She's looking at a story based in Africa with 1, 2 different links. If you are doing an international hard news story in Africa this week, there has been a coup in the country of Sudan, where there had been a joint agreement between the military and the governmental leaders to have shared governance, but the leader of Sudan that had been elected was actually abducted, he and his wife, by one of the generals in Sudan. So you could certainly look at that. But in this case, she is looking at online coverage from a website called CGTN Africa. This is CGTN Africa as of right now. The COVID-19 tracker in Africa, more than likely those numbers on the African continent, those are the confirmed cases. The numbers are probably much higher. These are the headlines as of 2021 in Africa on the continent. Now let's scroll back and you could watch it live. That's a nice part about looking at previous assignments. You may find something that was done in 2020 that you could use a link for in 2021. So this story, and I'll just scroll through it, it is discussing COVID recovery as of last year in Africa. And there was a statement from the Pan-African Bloc. Now notice, all of these links open in the same window. That's where she got the photo. Dateline October 17 of last year. And this was a conference that took place in Ethiopia. So that is one of the links that she's using from the same source. The continent-wide fundraiser for the anti-COVID-19 initiative has already raised over $44 million. Now keep in mind, 1 year ago, we were still looking here and around the world at different types of vaccination remedies to COVID. So we were very much in a state of flux, as you well know, last year, because none of us were on campus. It talks about Cameroon, and there's also a link to a French national, Cameroonian troops, free French national kidnapped by gunmen. So all of this was from a year ago. Again, the website is CGTN Africa, and you can see live coverage on video. And that is Sydney's story, and that is the front of Sydney's website from 2020. Now let's go to 2019. The next website that I want to show you is from 2019, and this is Elizabeth Nally, and I have it already set up to show you the story on her website. She has an outstanding, like Sydney, really an outstanding website in terms of design. But this was her story, also from the continent of Africa. Ethiopian migrants missing and being trafficked in Yemen. That's one of the graphics. Notice, similar to what you would have with one of the formats that we have with Kaylee, whenever you click on a graphic, it goes away and then the whole story pops back up on the screen. So this is Ethiopian migrants being missing and trafficked in Yemen. Very well written video account of migrants and some survivors. Let's play about 30 seconds of this. I'll go ahead and mute the audio because I don't know whether or not there's any natural sound underneath this or not, but this shows you many of the individuals who are going into Yemen. Now let's pick up a little audio.
Wanin websani awala ni kabdani jani kurar nuhani nutani ni samboda ka injira yet mantumani kalandisani samboda anga kurashani payedamani kurashanam boda ihumara gon kono tinkanana kalmata ka samboda ibamnan ran payed.
I mean, this is absolutely horrific. But it's important to understand the context of this international hard news story, which is, again, Ethiopian migrants having many problems, including sexual abuse and torture in Yemen. And that's the story. If they refuse to give their information, most do not escape with their lives. The son was quoted saying, if he could give any advice on the matter is, don't leave. It is not worth it. Now, we're right at the end of class, and I'm giving short shrift to this story, but it really is very serious. Now, if you click away from that and just go to what Elizabeth's website looks like, including visual journalism, and then to the bottom for all of the work that she did, this is an outstanding example. Now we'll go to 1, start here, and move up relatively slowly. This is why you want to always tweak your news blogs. Getting people inside the doorway. And once they're there, making sure that everything you do is factually accurate, thoughtfully written, thoughtfully edited, and well researched. Sydney Wader, 2020, Elizabeth Nally, 2019. The next website we're going to look at is Colby Clinton from 2018 and his example of an international hard or feature story. Now this is relatively compact. You can see everything fits right here. There's a link to the original story, but this is someone who plays what we call soccer, what everyone around the world calls football, jailed in a mafia trial. And that is the individual who was sentenced to 2 years for firearms offenses as part of a large mafia trial. Alleged links to a major organization linked to the Italian mafia, and that it's opening in a different window, but it is opening to a link from the BBC Dateline Halloween 2018. But it does have a link, and there are 2 different links, but they open in different windows. Now that's Colby's story, and again, all of it fits right on the screen. So if you want to do something that is a little more compact, that is certainly acceptable. And of course, down here, if I wanted to share it on social media 3 years ago, that's the way that I would do it, via Google Blogger and any of the social media links. Now that brings us to the final social media international hard news story of the day. And the social media website I'm going to show you from 2017 is Justice Seymour. His is also, like Colby Clinton from the year before, relatively compact. Quote, 26 teenage girls were found dead in the Mediterranean Sea on Sunday, November 5th. They are believed to be migrants from Niger and Nigeria who were on a boat going from Libya to Europe. The ship carried 400 people, 90 of them women, 52 minors, including a week-old baby. 2 men have been arrested for human smuggling, but there appears to be no connection between them and the teenage girls. And there's the graphic. And because I read everything else in totality, let's go back to the second paragraph quote. Autopsies will be carried out to see if the girls were tortured or sexually abused in any way. And remember the horrific story that was related to this, albeit from a different country, that Elizabeth Nally talked about 2 years later with that Associated Press video. So this was migrants from Niger and Nigeria who were trying to get from Libya to Europe. This is a link to the story, and it's opening in the same window. And even though it is 4 years ago, as you can see, November of 2017, the link is still there with the video itself. That's the nice part about this class. All of the interactivity giving you immediate credibility as a media professional, because there's a link to what Everything Justice did. Now let's show you what his website looks like from top to bottom using this particular format. He's got visual journalism, the wild card, everything from 19 and 20 all the way down to number 1. the definition of news. And then we click on older posts and we get to 14, trending on social media, which will be due in early November. Most of the graphics that you post will remain on the blog. As you saw whenever we were scrolling through this area of the blog from Justice, and here with number 7, sometimes 4 years later, the visuals are gone, but at least when you have it for the context of this course, hopefully that will not be the case. But the further I go back, the more that sometimes the graphics that you drop and drag might not always be there. But that's what his looks like. What we have done today is to look at a number of different projects, both from 2021 and from years gone by. I think we're off to a relatively good start now that we have gone through roughly more than half of the projects. If you run a little bit behind, will that have a bearing on your grade if you continue to do so? Absolutely. That's why I stopped earlier during the class on that part of the syllabus that said this is a time-driven industry and you have to make sure that you stay relatively current with the projects. But as a friendly reminder, I've already put this up on the screen once. Let's go back one more time to the assignments listing. When you are at this location, we are moving right along. Assignment 13, International Hard or Feature News, the 4 examples that we were just looking at, will be due at class time 48 hours from now on Thursday, the 28th. 1 week from today, nothing is going to be due. But assignment 14, what is trending on social media, will be looking at research related to that and popular culture or entertainment, assignment 15. But 1 week from Thursday, assignment 14, trending on social media, will be due. And once we get into November, it's important to stay on track. And it's always important to edit, always research, trying to make sure that the work that you do is representative of a media professional. And along those lines, always keep track of what websites look like for 2021, this semester, and in years gone by, because that's what I do before every class period. I usually go back at a minimum to 2017 with representative examples of projects, but you can go even further to 2016 or to 2015. Or if you even want to examine, before we went to blogs, the types of projects people were doing for visual journalism in years gone by, that is certainly acceptable as well. And that brings you down to this particular area, which I took a screenshot of Thursday of last week. Even though I'm doing this on Google Drive, it looks very similar on the website. Always watch the videos to pick up tips on how you can improve your writing and research. It really is important. So as we conclude the proceedings for today, as I indicated, and I've got the names of all of the student blogs here that we looked at today, we're doing some nice things, but always go back and double check the spelling, the grammar, the syntax, always double check those items and little things such as paragraphing or indenting or possibly taking something and making it into a larger font style so it is as easily readable on your phones as it is on your computers. But we will continue with the Baker's Dozen, assignment 13, due in 48 hours on Thursday, October 28th, which is International Hard or Feature News. Use some of the previous projects that I showed you, for instance, from Africa with Sydney Wader or some of the others as background research if you so choose. But any area of the world is acceptable. If you want to do something on a lighter note, always keep in mind, you can do something that is feature related, but based globally. Good luck with your research. Good luck with your upcoming editing for projects 13 through 20 and the visual journalism final, or something like that. The visual journalism final. As for MM2003, reporting and writing for the mass media, that concludes the reporting session for today.